The evening rain had finally stopped, but the streets still shimmered under the glow of street lamps, tiny puddles reflecting the orange light like scattered fragments of a broken sunset. Hina stepped down from the bus, holding her umbrella loosely in one hand, droplets still sliding off its edge. The air carried that familiar after-rain scent, fresh, earthy, and slightly sweet. She was tired. The day at the small marketing firm had been relentless, phone calls that never ended, deadlines that came in waves, and a printer that decided to stop working at the worst possible time. All she wanted was to grab a few groceries, go home, and sink into her couch. But as she approached the small corner grocery store, a sudden movement caught her eye. A man stood outside, balancing two large paper bags in his arms. His tall frame looked slightly hunched from the weight. A few customers walked past him without much notice, heading straight for their cars. But just as Hina was about to step through the sliding doors, she heard the sound, a soft thump followed by a hollow roll. One of his bags had split at the bottom. A cascade of shiny red and green apples tumbled out, bouncing and rolling across the damp pavement. The man tried to crouch, but with his hands already full, he couldn't gather them quickly enough. A few apples rolled toward the gutter, threatening to disappear forever. Hina didn't think twice. She snapped her umbrella shut, tucked it under her arm, and hurried over. "Hold still," she said gently, kneeling to grab the apples before they rolled too far. "Let me help before they escape." The man looked at her, slightly startled, then gave a faint smile, one that seemed both grateful and a little embarrassed. "Thank you, I didn't realize the bag was so flimsy." "It's the rain," Hina replied, placing the rescued apples back on top of the other bag he was still holding. "Paper bags don't survive long when they're wet." A light chuckle escaped him. True. His voice was deep, smooth, and strangely calming. "Here," she said, straightening up and holding out her hands. "I'll carry one of the bags." "Which car is yours?" For a moment, he hesitated, glancing at her like he wasn't used to strangers offering help. Then, after a beat, he handed her the heavier bag. "I'm parked just over there." They walked side by side through the cool evening air, their footsteps echoing faintly against the wet ground. The street wasn't busy, just a few cars driving by, their headlights streaking across the slick road. Hina noticed his suit jacket beneath the half-zipped coat, the way his shoes were polished but now slightly damp from the rain. "You've got a lot of groceries," she said, trying to break the silence. "Long week ahead," he replied. "I prefer stocking up rather than making daily trips. Saves time." "Smart," Hina said with a small smile. "I usually do the opposite. And then I complain every evening that I have nothing to cook." He laughed, a warm, genuine sound that made the dampness in the air feel a little lighter. When they reached a sleek black car, she placed the bag gently in the trunk. He followed, setting his own bag beside it. For a moment, they both stood there in the soft glow of the street lamp, the faint mist in the air curling between them. "You didn't have to stop," he said finally, turning toward her. "Most people, they just walk past." Hina shrugged lightly. "The world already feels heavy most days. If I can make it even a tiny bit lighter for someone else, why wouldn't I?" His eyes lingered on her for a moment, thoughtful, as if her words had caught him off guard. Then, almost as quickly, he nodded with a faint smile. "Well, thank you, really." She gave a small wave as she stepped back. "Take care, and maybe invest in sturdier bags next time." His smile deepened at that, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "Noted." Hina turned and walked away, the sound of her shoes tapping softly against the wet pavement. By the time she glanced back, the man was already in his car, headlights illuminating the road ahead. She had no reason to think about him again, he was just another fleeting face in a city full of strangers. Or so she thought. The next morning, Hina arrived at the office earlier than usual. The sky outside was still pale, the soft light of dawn filtering through the tall glass windows of the marketing firm's reception area. She carried a paper cup of coffee in one hand and a folder full of client reports in the other, mentally preparing herself for another long day. As soon as she stepped inside, she noticed it, the unusual energy in the air. People who were normally glued to their screens were whispering in small groups, their voices low but excited. Even the usually grumpy receptionist had an extra bounce in her tone. "What's going on?" Hina asked her colleague Sana, who was adjusting her hair in a compact mirror. "You didn't hear," Sana whispered, eyes wide. "We're getting a new CEO today. The board finalized it last night. Apparently, He's young, successful, and ridiculously rich. Hina raised an eyebrow, sipping her coffee. Sounds like the start of an office gossip novel. Sana grinned. You laugh now, but wait until you see him. Before Hina could reply, their manager, Mr. Kamal, appeared at the doorway, clapping his hands loudly. Everyone, conference room, now, let's welcome our new leader. The staff shuffled toward the large glass-walled room, murmurs filling the air. Hina took a seat near the back, her mind already on the work she'd left on her desk. This was just a formality, smile, clap, then get back to deadlines. Mr. Kamal stepped aside, gesturing toward the entrance. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Mr. Zion Malik, our new CEO. Hina's pen nearly slipped from her hand. Standing there, dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit, was the man from last night, the stranger whose groceries she had carried through the rain. His presence was magnetic, his expression calm yet confident. But when his eyes scanned the room and landed on her, something shifted. His lips curved into a small, knowing smile. For a moment, Hina felt the air catch in her lungs. She was so caught off guard that she almost didn't hear the rest of Mr. Kamal's introduction, something about Zion's years of international experience, his vision for the company, his impressive portfolio. It all blurred into background noise against the thud of her own heartbeat. After a brief, polished speech about teamwork and innovation, Zion thanked everyone and invited the team to continue working as usual while he familiarized himself with the company's operations. People clapped, some lingering to shake his hand. Hina stayed in her seat, still processing what had just happened. Of all the possibilities she'd imagined last night when she walked away from that grocery store, this had not been one of them. She had almost convinced herself to slip back to her desk unnoticed when a shadow fell across her table. So, Zion said, leaning slightly toward her, his voice low enough that only she could hear, it seems my good Samaritan works here. Hina blinked, still in disbelief. You're the new CEO. Guilty as charged, he said with an amused glint in his eyes. I have to admit, it's not every day that a stranger helps me rescue runaway apples in the rain. I suppose I should thank you again, this time in a professional setting. Her lips twitched into a reluctant smile. You don't have to. I didn't know I was helping my boss. His smile deepened. Well, now you do. And I think that makes your kindness even more impressive. Most people are nicer when they know it'll benefit them. You didn't expect anything at all. Before she could respond, Sana appeared at her elbow with a folder, pretending to need Hina's input but clearly eavesdropping. Zion glanced at Sana briefly, then returned his gaze to Hina. We'll talk later, he said quietly, before straightening up and moving on to greet other employees. Hina sat there for a moment longer, watching him move through the room, composed, confident, and effortlessly charismatic. Around her, her colleagues were already buzzing about his looks, his suit, his rumored wealth. But Hina wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about the way his smile had lingered when he saw her. And, despite herself, she was curious about what he might say when, later, finally came. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed more often. Zion would occasionally stop by her desk under the pretense of checking a project, but the conversations always drifted into lighter, warmer territory, books, rainy days, little acts of kindness. One evening, as most employees had left, Hina stayed late finishing a proposal. Zion appeared at her door, holding 2 cups of tea. You know, he said, handing her one, last night in that parking lot, I thought I'd never see you again. But maybe, the world has a way of bringing the right people together. Hina smiled, feeling the weight of his words. She didn't know where this connection would lead, but she knew one thing, sometimes, helping a stranger could change more than just their day. In the days that followed, Hina and Zion's interactions shifted from polite exchanges to something warmer, more personal. What began as small talks by her desk soon turned into shared lunches, light-hearted banter, and moments of quiet understanding in between the chaos of work. Hina never forgot how they had met, not in a boardroom, not through a formal introduction, but on a rainy evening when 2 strangers crossed paths over a torn grocery bag. It reminded her that life had a strange way of weaving people into each other's stories when they least expected it. For Zion, the memory of that night lingered too, not because of the inconvenience of spilled apples, but because of the way Hina had stopped without hesitation to help. She hadn't known who he was, and that made her kindness mean even more. By the time weeks turned into months, the 2 of them had built more than just a working relationship. They had built trust, respect, and a quiet affection that neither could ignore. And every now and then, Xiang would tease her about saving his groceries, as if it were the most important moment of his life, because, in a way, it was. Sometimes, Hina thought about how easily she could have walked past him that rainy night. But she hadn't, and that one small act of kindness had changed both of their lives forever.